In the quiet town of Klingenberg, Germany, a story unfolded in the 1970s that would go on to haunt generations to come. It's a tale that intertwines faith, fear, and the boundaries of human understanding. This is the story of Anneliese Michel and the exorcism that gripped a nation. Born in 1952, Anneliese Michel was just like any other child. She played, laughed, and grew up in a devoutly Catholic family. But as the years passed, a shadow began to creep over her life. At 16, she experienced her first seizure. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition that can cause hallucinations or illusions of unpleasant smells or sounds. By 1973, Anneliese's behavior had taken a dark turn. She detested religious artifacts, heard voices, and displayed strength that seemed superhuman. Her once bright eyes now often appeared vacant or filled with terror. Desperate and fearful, her parents sought the help of the Catholic Church, believing their daughter was possessed by demons. The church, after some hesitation, agreed. 2 priests, Father Arnold Renz and Pastor Ernst Alt, were assigned to the case. They believed Anneliese was inhabited by several demons, including Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, and Nero. In the early stages of her ordeal, Anneliese Michel's experiences were primarily medical in nature. In June 1970, while at a psychiatric hospital, she suffered her 3rd seizure. Doctors prescribed her anticonvulsion medications, including Dilantin, but these failed to bring relief. Disturbingly, Anneliese reported visions of devil faces throughout the day. Seeking a solution, medical professionals introduced Aolep to her treatment, a drug akin to chlorpromazine, typically used for various psychoses, including schizophrenia and delusions. However, by 1973, her mental state had deteriorated further. Anneliese began to suffer from depression, experienced hallucinations during her prayers, and was tormented by voices declaring her damned and destined for hell. Despite her time in the psychiatric hospital and the various treatments administered, her health showed no signs of improvement. Her depression deepened, and after 5 years of relying on pharmacological treatments with no positive results, her faith in medical intervention waned. Alarmingly, she developed an aversion to Christian symbols, particularly the crucifix, further intensifying concerns about her well-being. In a bid to find solace and perhaps answers, Anneliese Michel embarked on a pilgrimage to San Damiano, some 87 miles northwest of Bologna in Italy. She was accompanied by a family friend who frequently organized such Christian journeys. However, what was meant to be a spiritual retreat took a disturbing turn. Anneliese's reactions to religious symbols became even more pronounced. She was unable to approach a crucifix or partake of the water from a Christian holy spring, leading her escort to believe she was under demonic influence. Father Ernst Alt, who later became deeply involved in Anneliese's case, recounted a chilling testimony. Anneliese had confided in him, a story corroborated by Frau Hein about her harrowing experience at the shrine. She described the ground as burning beneath her feet, making it unbearable to approach the sacred site. Attempting to circumvent the shrine, she was horrified to perceive the devout who were deep in prayer, as if they were gnashing their teeth in aggression. Despite multiple efforts, Anneliese found herself unable to enter the shrine's garden. Even images of Christ and depictions of saints became intolerable to her, shimmering with an intense sparkle that was blinding and overwhelming. The pilgrimage, rather than offering spiritual relief, only deepened the mystery and concern surrounding Anneliese's condition. As Anneliese's condition deteriorated and her aversion to religious symbols grew more pronounced, her family and community became increasingly convinced that they were witnessing a case of demonic possession. Desperate for a solution, they approached several priests, seeking an exorcism to free Anneliese from her perceived tormentors. However, the priests were hesitant. They emphasized the importance of continuing medical treatment and clarified that performing an exorcism wasn't a decision made lightly. In the Catholic Church, an exorcism requires the explicit permission of a bishop, and this approval is only granted under stringent criteria. To understand the Church's cautious approach, one must delve into its teachings on demonic activities. According to experts like Reverend Vincent Lampert, there are 4 primary types of demonic activities that might necessitate an exorcism. 1. Demonic possession. This is where a demon takes over an individual's body, using it as if it was their own. Such cases are exceedingly rare. 2. Demonic infestation. This pertains to the presence of evil in a specific location, like a haunted house, or tied to an object, such as a cursed artifact or a Ouija board. 3. Demonic vexation. These are direct physical attacks by demonic entities, manifesting as unexplained injuries like cuts, bites, or bruises on the victim. 4. Demonic obsession. This is a more insidious form of attack, targeting an individual's mind. The demon attempts to infiltrate a person's thoughts, ensuring that their perceptions and experiences are tainted by its malevolent influence. Given these classifications, the Church's primary concern was determining whether Anneliese's experiences genuinely indicated possession or infestatio, meaning she was under demonic control. The intense aversion to religious objects she displayed was indeed one of the initial signs of such a possession. However, the Church's rigorous criteria meant that every possible explanation had to be explored before resorting to the ancient rite of exorcism. As time wore on, Anneliese Michel's condition took a harrowing turn for the worse. Not only did she exhibit severe physical deterioration, but her actions also became increasingly erratic and disturbing. She displayed heightened aggression, self-inflicted injuries, and engaged in deeply unsettling behaviors, like drinking her own urine and consuming insects. In an attempt to curb her escalating symptoms, doctors prescribed Tegretol in November 1973. This drug, known for its anti-seizure properties and mood-stabilizing effects, was added to her regimen. Alongside this, Anneliese was also given antipsychotic medications during the religious rites she underwent. Yet despite the medical interventions, her condition only deteriorated further. She began to growl, claim to see demonic entities, and would hurl objects in fits of rage. The depth of Anneliese's delusions reached alarming levels. Convinced of her possession, she engaged in acts that were both shocking and heart-wrenching. She would tear at her clothes, driven by an unseen force, and in manic bursts of energy she would perform up to 400 squats in a single day. In one particularly distressing episode, Anneliese crawled under a table, barking incessantly like a dog for 2 whole days. Her actions became even more grotesque as she consumed spiders and coal and decapitated a dead bird to bite its head. This phase of Anneliese's life painted a grim picture of a young woman trapped in a relentless battle between her mind, body, and the unseen forces she believed had taken hold of her. By September 1975, Anneliese Michel's plight had reached the ears of the higher echelons of the Catholic Church. Recognizing the severity of her condition and perhaps swayed by the pleas of her family and community, Bishop Josef Stangl made a momentous decision. He granted Father Arnold Renz the authority to perform an exorcism on Anneliese, adhering to the guidelines of the Rituale Romanum, a centuries-old rite of the Church. However, with this permission came a strict condition. The proceedings were to be shrouded in complete secrecy. The inaugural exorcism session led by Father Renz took place on September 24th. As the rites progressed, Anneliese's utterances became even more troubling. She spoke fervently of the desire to die as atonement, not just for her own perceived sins, but for the transgressions of the wayward youth of the day and for what she saw as the apostate priests of the modern church. In a move that further isolated Anneliese from medical intervention, her parents, respecting her wishes and perhaps driven by their own beliefs, ceased seeking medical advice. Over the next 10 months, 67 exorcism sessions were conducted, some lasting up to 4 hours. The rites followed the Roman ritual of 1614, a centuries-old script for banishing evil. Anneliese, bound and often in a trance-like state, would scream, growl, and convulse. The sounds were chilling, the atmosphere thick with tension. There were moments of calm where Anneliese would speak lucidly, only for the darkness to reclaim her once more. The sessions were recorded over a series of 43 audio tapes. The following is an excerpt of one of the recordings.
Dr. Gruber, cheating. Give me your stethoscope. Give me your stethoscope, please. Hurry, Doctor. Okay, let's go.
Son soir ton fils. Je suis la bête immonde de la mer. خدا نمیبخشه. گیرید نخوی.
In omni Christianum fidei Deteriorating Erratic.
As word spread of the ongoing exorcisms, the media and public became enthralled. Was this a genuine case of demonic possession, or was it a deeply troubled young woman in need of medical intervention? Critics argued that Anneliese's symptoms were consistent with her epilepsy and mental illness, exacerbated by the rigorous exorcism sessions. They believed she needed psychiatric care, not religious rites. On July 1, 1976, Anneliese's battle reached its tragic conclusion. Weakened from the prolonged rituals, malnutrition, and dehydration, she passed away in her home. She was just 23. Her death sent shockwaves throughout Germany and the world. The debate raged on. Was this a case of religious fervor gone too far, or was it a genuine battle against dark forces? The tragic end of Anneliese Michel's life did not mean the end of her story. In the wake of her death, a thorough investigation was launched. The state prosecutor, after examining the details, made a chilling assertion. Anneliese's death could have been averted even if intervention had come as late as a week before her demise. In 1976, the weight of the law bore down on those closest to Anneliese during her final days. Charges of negligent homicide were brought against her parents and the two priests, Ernst Alt and Arnold Renz. The ensuing trial drew significant attention. The parents secured the services of Erich Schmidt-Leichner, a renowned defense attorney best known for his role in the Nuremberg trials. Meanwhile, the priests received legal counsel funded by the church. However, the state's stance was not one of seeking retribution. Instead, they recommended leniency. For the priests, the proposed sentence was a monetary fine. As for Anneliese's grieving parents, the prosecution believed they had endured enough anguish. Citing a provision in German penal law that allows for mitigation based on significant suffering, the state argued that the parents should be spared any further punishment. On March 30, 1978, the courtroom was abuzz with anticipation as the trial commenced. The case had garnered significant public attention, with many eager to witness the unfolding of events that blended religious beliefs with legal scrutiny. Medical professionals were among the first to testify. They firmly asserted that Anneliese Michel was not under demonic possession. Instead, they believed her symptoms and behaviors were the combined result of her deeply religious upbringing and her diagnosed epilepsy. A particularly haunting statement came from Dr. Richard Roth, whom Father Alt had approached for medical advice during the exorcism. He reportedly told Anneliese, "There is no injection against the devil." The defense, led by the esteemed Erich Schmidt-Leichner, presented a different narrative. They argued that the exorcism was not only legal but also protected under the German Constitution, which guarantees citizens the right to unrestricted exercise of their religious beliefs. To bolster their claims of possession, the defense played tapes from the exorcism sessions. These recordings, they claimed, captured the voices of demons arguing. The priests involved in the exorcism testified that these demons had identified themselves as figures like Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, and even historical figures such as Hitler and Nero. They firmly believed that Anneliese was liberated from these demonic entities shortly before her tragic death. Bishop Stangl, the one who had initially granted permission for the exorcism, distanced himself from the proceedings. He claimed ignorance of Anneliese's dire health condition at the time of approving the exorcism and chose not to testify in court. The verdict, when delivered in April 1978, was a mix of relief and surprise. Both priests and the Michels were found guilty of negligent homicide. However, instead of imprisonment, they received suspended sentences and were mandated to bear the costs of the legal proceedings. Interestingly, the sentences were notably harsher than what the prosecutor had recommended. The Church's decision to sanction the age-old rite of exorcism had inadvertently thrust it into the limelight, prompting intense media scrutiny. In the aftermath, opinions on the case varied. Author John M. Duffy posited that Anneliese's ordeal was a tragic misidentification of mental illness. Reflecting on the events years later, German bishops convened in a conference where they retracted their earlier claims of Anneliese's possession, adding another layer of complexity to an already enigmatic case. The conclusion of the trial did not bring closure to the Michel family. Distraught over the hurried burial of their daughter in a modest coffin, they sought permission from the authorities to exhume Anneliese's remains. Their request was granted, and on February 25, 1978, nearly 2 years after her initial burial, Anneliese's body was transferred to a new, sturdier oak coffin lined with tin. Official records from the exhumation indicated that the state of her body was consistent with the expected decomposition of a corpse of that age. However, in a move that raised eyebrows, the family and the priests were strongly advised against viewing her remains. Father Renz even claimed he was barred from entering the mortuary. Despite the controversies and the tragic nature of her story, Anneliese's final resting place has become a beacon for many. Her gravesite has evolved into a pilgrimage destination, especially for a segment of devout Catholics. They believe that in her suffering and death, Anneliese atoned for the sins of wayward priests and the transgressions of the youth. Years later, on June 6, 2013, another mysterious event occurred. The house where Anneliese had lived and endured her torments was consumed by flames. While local police investigations pointed towards arson, whispers among the locals told a different tale. Some believe that the fire was yet another manifestation of the alleged demonic forces linked to the exorcism case, a chilling reminder of the dark events that once transpired within those walls. The story of Anneliese Michel has left an indelible mark on popular culture. It inspired movies, books, and debates on the nature of possession, faith, and the limits of human understanding. For some, Anneliese's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of blind faith. For others, it's a testament to the existence of a world beyond our comprehension. In the end, the truth remains elusive, but one thing is certain: the haunting tale of Anneliese Michel will continue to captivate and terrify for generations to come.